The storm came fast and without warning. Dark clouds rolled over the frozen land, swallowing the sky. Snow and ice hit the ground like sharp blades. The wind screamed as if the world itself was angry. In the middle of this white chaos stood a small wooden cabin, old but strong. Inside the cabin, a human man named Ethan added another piece of wood to the fire. The room was warm, but the walls shook. He had lived alone on this frontier world for years. Storms were common here, but this one felt different. Stronger, louder, almost alive. The lights flickered once, then went out. Ethan frowned. He reached for a lantern and lit it. The soft yellow glow pushed back the shadows, but not the fear. The storm outside grew worse. Snow hit the windows hard. Something heavy slammed into the side of the cabin. He froze. That was not the wind. Ethan grabbed his old rifle and moved slowly toward the door. His heart beat fast, but his face stayed calm. Panic never helped. He had learned that long ago. Then he heard it. Footsteps. More than one. They were heavy, slow, careful. A deep voice spoke outside, strange and rough, not human. The words were not clear, but the meaning was simple. Shelter. Ethan swallowed. On this world, most aliens avoided humans. And the ones who did not were dangerous. The knock came next. Not loud, not weak, controlled. Ethan stood still for a long moment. The storm howled around the cabin, as if pushing him to decide. If he opened the door, he could be letting death inside. If he did not, whatever stood outside would die in the storm. With a slow breath, Ethan unlocked the door and pulled it open. Cold air rushed in. Standing outside were 5 figures. They were tall, taller than any human. Their armor was dark and marked with claw symbols. Snow covered their shoulders and helmets. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dark. Alien huntresses, predators, warriors. One of them was bleeding. Another leaned heavily on her weapon. They looked strong, but the storm had hurt them. They all stared at Ethan. For a second, no one moved. Then Ethan stepped aside. "Come in," he said. "Before the storm kills you." The Huntresses exchanged quick looks. Then they entered, one by one, filling the small cabin with their presence. The air felt tight, like a rope pulled too far. Ethan closed the door. The Huntresses removed parts of their armor but kept their weapons close. Their eyes never left him. He could feel their strength, their danger. But he also saw exhaustion. As he added more wood to the fire, he felt a gaze burning into him. One Huntress stood apart from the others. She was taller, her armor marked differently. Her eyes followed every move Ethan made. Slowly, her lips curved into a small smile. She leaned toward another Huntress and whispered something. The others stiffened. Ethan did not understand her words, but the tone was clear. The storm roared outside. Inside the cabin, something far more dangerous had begun. The fire cracked loudly, sending sparks into the air. Shadows moved across the wooden walls as the flames danced. The cabin felt smaller now, like it was shrinking under the weight of 5 alien Huntresses and 1 human. Ethan stayed near the fire, his rifle resting against the wall. He did not raise it. He knew that fear could turn into violence too quickly. Instead, he focused on breathing and staying calm. The Huntresses spread out inside the cabin. 2 stood near the door. One checked the windows. Another leaned against the far wall, watching everything with sharp eyes. They moved like trained hunters, silent and alert. The tall Huntress with marked armor stayed closest to Ethan. Her eyes never left him. The storm outside hit harder. The wind screamed. Ice slammed against the roof. Even the Huntresses seemed uneasy now. Whatever the storm was, it was not normal. Ethan broke the silence. "You can stay until it ends," he said slowly. "This cabin is strong." The Huntresses spoke softly among themselves in a sharp, clicking language. Ethan did not understand the words, but he understood the tone. Caution, debate, control. One Huntress stepped forward. She was broad and scarred, her voice deep. "You are alone," she said in broken human speech. "Why?" Ethan shrugged. "Someone has to live out here." That answer seemed to surprise them. He moved toward a storage box and pulled out blankets and dried food. He placed them on the table, then stepped back. He did not turn his back on them. The Huntresses watched closely. One sniffed the air. "You are not afraid," she said. "I am," Ethan replied. "I just don't let it rule me." The tall Huntress smiled again. She stepped closer, slow and confident. Ethan could feel her presence like heat. She circled him once, studying him from every angle. The other Huntresses tensed, their hands near their weapons. Ethan did not move. The tall Huntress stopped in front of him. "Human," she said. Her voice was smooth but strong. "You let predators into your den." "I saw injured travelers," Ethan answered. "Not predators." That made the others react. One gave a low growl. Another laughed softly. The tall Huntress tilted her head. "Brave or foolish?" "Sometimes both," Ethan said. For the first time, the Huntresses relaxed just a little. The fire warmed their armor. The storm trapped them all together, whether they liked it or not. The tall Huntress sat down near Ethan. Too close. Her knee brushed his arm. The others noticed immediately. A sharp look passed between them. "Careful," one Huntress warned her. She did not move away. Her eyes stayed locked on Ethan's face. "The storm chose this place," she said quietly. "Interesting." Ethan felt something shift in the air. This was no longer just about shelter. Outside, the storm continued its attack. Inside the cabin, the Huntresses were no longer only watching the storm. They were watching the human. And one of them was already thinking of him as something more than shelter. The storm did not slow down. Hours passed, but the wind only grew louder. Ice covered the windows completely, turning the world outside into a white wall. The cabin felt cut off from the rest of the planet. Inside, the tension grew. Ethan poured heated water into metal cups and placed them on the table. He moved with care, slow and open, showing he carried no threat. Still, he could feel their eyes on him at all times. The Huntresses watched everything. How he stood, how he moved, how he never rushed. Most beings feared them. Ethan did not. That confused them. One Huntress removed her helmet and set it down. Her face was sharp, marked with faint scars. "Why do you not shake?" she asked. Ethan looked at her. "Shaking doesn't help." That answer spread through the room like quiet fire. The tall Huntress leaned back, studying him. Her gaze was not cold now. It was curious. A loud crack came from one of their armor plates. The Huntress near the wall hissed in pain. Her chest armor had split during the storm. Without thinking, Ethan stepped forward. The others reacted instantly. Weapons lifted. Claws flexed. Ethan stopped, hands raised. "I can fix it." The tall Huntress gave a sharp signal. The others hesitated, then lowered their weapons. Ethan took simple tools from a box near the wall. Wire, metal strips, heat seal glue. Nothing advanced. Just human tools. He knelt in front of the injured Huntress and worked carefully. His hands were steady, focused, respectful. The Huntresses watched in silence. This was not how prey behaved. When Ethan finished, the armor held strong. The injured Huntress tested it and nodded slowly. "You repair like a builder," she said. Ethan smiled faintly. "Humans build to survive." That word again. Survive. The tall Huntress stood and walked closer. "Most beings hide when faced with hunters," she said. "You do not." Ethan met her eyes. "I've learned that fear invites worse things." That answer stayed with them. She circled him again, slower this time. Her presence was heavy, but not threatening. "You are smaller," she said. "Softer." "True," Ethan replied. "But," she continued, "you do not break." The other Huntresses exchanged looks. Their view of the human was changing. The tall Huntress stopped in front of him, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her body. Her voice lowered. "A storm reveals truth." Ethan nodded. "It always does." She leaned toward another Huntress and whispered something in her own language. The others stiffened. One growled softly. "Already." The tall Huntress did not look away from Ethan. I saw him first, she whispered. The words were quiet, but the meaning hit the room like thunder. Ethan felt the shift. He did not know their customs, but he understood one thing clearly. The storm had not only trapped them together, it had made him the center of something dangerous and very real. The fire burned low, but no one moved to add more wood. The words spoken moments ago still hung in the air, heavy and sharp. I saw him first. The Huntresses stood frozen. Their bodies were still, but their eyes burned with quiet tension. This was no small statement. Ethan could feel it even without understanding their full customs. The tall Huntress stepped closer to him. Not touching. Not yet. Her posture was calm, confident, and clear. The others slowly spread out, giving space. That alone told Ethan this moment mattered. One Huntress broke the silence. This place is shelter, she said firmly. Not a ground for claim. The tall Huntress turned her head slightly. The storm decides many things. Another Huntress laughed, low and sharp. You speak as if fate bends to your will. The tall Huntress finally looked away from Ethan. Her eyes locked onto the speaker. It bends to strength. The cabin felt smaller than ever. Ethan took a slow breath. He did not step back. He did not step forward. He stayed where he was, steady and silent. Whatever this was, fear would only make it worse. The storm slammed against the cabin again, shaking the beams. Snow pushed through small cracks in the walls. The sound reminded everyone why they were here, trapped. The tall Huntress reached up and removed the rest of her helmet. Her face was calm, but her eyes were sharp and alive. She turned back to Ethan. In our kind, she said, speaking clearly, choice is shown under pressure. One of the others hissed softly. You push old rules. She nodded. Old rules survive because they work. Ethan finally spoke. I didn't ask to be part of this. Her eyes softened just a little. That matters, she said. But it does not erase what is seen. Another Huntress stepped forward. He is human. Soft world-born. Ethan met her gaze. I'm still here. That earned a few surprised looks. The tall Huntress lifted her hand, stopping further argument. She took one slow step closer to Ethan, close enough now that the heat of her body touched his arm. She did not grab him. She placed her hand flat against her own chest. A claim is not ownership, she said to the others. It is responsibility. Silence followed. Then another Huntress spoke, quieter this time. If you claim, you defend. I will, the tall Huntress replied without hesitation. Ethan felt the weight of her words. Whatever she was offering, it came with danger. Outside, the storm howled louder than before. The cabin lights flickered again, then steadied. The tall Huntress looked down at Ethan. When the storm ends, paths open, she said. Until then, I stand. She stepped back just enough to give him space. But everyone in the room understood. A line had been crossed. The storm still raged outside. Inside the cabin, a different kind of battle had begun, quiet, controlled, and far more personal. The tension did not fade. It grew thicker like the air before a fight. The Huntresses did not draw weapons, but their bodies were ready. Muscles tight, eyes sharp. Every small movement carried meaning. Ethan stood between them without realizing it. Not as a shield, not as bait, just there. The storm outside struck again, louder than before. A deep crack echoed through the cabin roof. Dust fell from the beams. For a moment, everyone looked up. The cabin held. Ethan moved first. He crossed the room and added more wood to the fire. The flames rose, bright and steady. The simple action broke the frozen moment. We'll all survive the night better if we stay calm, he said. His voice was firm but not loud. One Huntress scoffed. You speak like a leader. Ethan turned to face her. I'm just someone who doesn't want anyone dead. That answer landed harder than anger would have. The tall Huntress watched him closely. Her expression did not change, but something in her eyes did. Respect, maybe, or surprise. Another Huntress stepped forward. If conflict starts, she said, blood will be spilled. Ethan nodded. Then don't start it. Silence followed. No threats. No challenge. Just truth. The Huntresses were warriors. They lived by strength and dominance. But this human showed a different kind of strength. Control. Choice. Calm under pressure. That confused them. The tall Huntress stepped beside Ethan, not in front of him. Beside him. That is why, she said quietly. He matters. One of the others growled, but did not argue. A sudden sound cut through the cabin. A beam snapped. The roof dipped slightly. Snow poured inside. Without thinking, Ethan ran forward. He grabbed a support pole and pushed it back into place. His boots slipped on the ice. His shoulder slammed into the wood. Pain flashed across his face. He did not stop. The Huntresses moved instantly. Two grabbed the beam. One reinforced it with metal supports from her pack. In seconds, the roof was stable again. They stared at Ethan. He was breathing hard. Blood ran from a cut on his forehead. He wiped it away with his sleeve. You could have been crushed, one Huntress said. Yeah, Ethan replied. But the cabin couldn't. That made them pause. You risk yourself for shelter? Another asked. Ethan looked around the room. It's not just shelter anymore. The tall Huntress reached out and touched the blood on his forehead with 2 fingers. Her touch was gentle, careful. You bleed, she said softly. Everyone does, Ethan answered. She nodded slowly. But not everyone stands. She turned to the others. This is strength. No one challenged her. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside the cabin, something had changed. The human was no longer prey, no longer just shelter. He was a force they had not expected, and that made him dangerous in a way none of them could ignore. The storm began to weaken near dawn. The wind still howled, but it had lost its rage. The cabin stopped shaking. The silence between gusts grew longer, heavier. Everyone felt it. The worst had passed. Ethan sat near the fire, his shoulder wrapped in a simple cloth. The pain was there, sharp and constant, but he ignored it. Pain meant he was alive. That was enough. The Huntresses gathered their armor and weapons. Movements were slower now, thoughtful. No one rushed. No one spoke loudly. The tall Huntress stood near the door, looking out through a small crack in the wood. White light filled the world beyond. The storm releases us, she said. The others responded with nods. Relief mixed with something else. Uncertainty. They were hunters. Always moving. Always fighting. Shelter was temporary. Bonds were rare. This one was different. Ethan stood and stretched carefully. The path east clears first, he said. Ice breaks there before anywhere else. The Huntresses looked at him in surprise. You track storms? One asked. Long enough, Ethan replied. You learn their habits. The tall Huntress turned to face him fully. Her eyes searched his face, not as a predator now, but as an equal. You could remain here, she said. Alone. Safe. Ethan shook his head. Safe doesn't mean alive. That answer stayed with her. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. A claim was spoken. I remember, Ethan said calmly. It can be undone, she continued. Choice is still yours. That mattered more than she knew. Ethan looked around the cabin, at the fire, the walls, the quiet. Then he looked at the Huntresses. You didn't treat me like an object, he said. You listened. A rare thing. The tall Huntress placed her hand over her heart again. Then hear this. I do not claim what does not choose. Silence filled the cabin. One by one, the Huntresses secured their armor. No anger, no jealousy, only respect. The tall Huntress paused at the door. She turned back once more. When paths cross again, she said, they will not be the same. Ethan gave a small smile. Storms do that. She nodded, then stepped outside. The Huntresses vanished into the white world, moving fast and strong. Ethan closed the door and leaned against it. The cabin felt empty now, quiet, but not the same. The storm had ended, and in its wake something far greater had begun. The cabin stayed quiet long after the Huntresses left. The fire burned low, sending soft light across the empty room. Outside, the storm was gone. The world looked clean, untouched, and cold. Ethan stood at the window, watching the distant shapes of the Huntresses fade into the white land. For the first time in years, the silence felt heavy. Not lonely, but full. He cleaned the blood from the floor, repaired the broken beam. Life returned to simple tasks, but his thoughts would not rest. Hours passed. Then the ground trembled. Ethan felt it through his boots. A deep, steady rhythm. Not the storm, something else. He stepped outside. Across the frozen plain, a Huntress ship hovered low. Its engines hummed softly, controlled. A ramp lowered. The tall Huntress stood there alone. Ethan did not reach for his rifle. She walked toward him slowly. No armor on her chest now. No helmet. Just strength and purpose. "I left without finishing a path," she said. Ethan nodded. "Storms don't always end cleanly." She stopped a few steps away. "My kind will speak of this night, of a human who stood firm when hunters watched." "That sounds dangerous," Ethan said. She allowed a small smile. "Respect is always dangerous." She looked at the cabin. "You could remain here, or you could step beyond it." Ethan felt the weight of her words. This was not an order, not a claim. It was an offer. "What happens if I say no?" he asked. "You remain human," she answered. "Free. And if I say yes? Then humanity is seen." That was the real choice. Ethan took a slow breath and looked at the sky, at the wide, open world beyond his cabin. Humans survived by hiding once. They would not always. He stepped forward. The tall Huntress placed her hand on his shoulder. Not to hold, to stand beside. "That is enough," she said. The ship lifted into the sky. Far away, eyes would turn toward humanity. Not as prey, not as weak, but as something worth respecting. And it all began with a storm and a single knock on a cabin door.